This episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks is brought to you by Gigabyte's AMD X570 ARS motherboards for third-generation AMD Ryzen 3000 processors. Hit the link in the description below for more details. In this episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, we'll be rising up. We'll be taking a trip to the next galaxy, upgrading integrated weak sauce, working from home in the Geek Bunker, and we'll tell you how you could win a killer alien spacecraft. Next. Alien spacecrafts, that's what's going to bail us out of this coronavirus mess, right, guys? They're going to come down and scoop us up.
High dose vitamin C, washing our hands, and a couple of antivirals and antibiotics. It looks like it's going to be the key, actually.
And social distancing.
There you go. Just dive right in. Hey, Dave Altavilla here for Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks with my compatriots Marco and Brittany. Marco Chiappetta, Brittany Getting, and Chris Getting behind the curtain, working the knobs and dials. How you doing there, buddy? Looking swank.
I am hanging on.
Hanging on. We're going to defy this virus and quarantining and all of this negative vibe going on, and we're just going to roll with it because we're used to this. We're used to working from home. We do this jam all the time, and we'll pull this through this together, right? Boys and girls?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So what's been happening with your collective situations? Marco, let's start with you. Has life changed much for you this past week or two?
No, I mean, the worst thing for me so far is that all my gyms are closed, so I don't get to go hit the bag and vent my frustrations. But, working from home for close to, 15, 16 years already, I kind of like when the kids are here. The kids' school is closed. They're here. I'm used to it. This is like any other vacation. I get to sleep in a little later because I'm not rushing to feed them and get them on the bus. So the distance learning is taking some adjustment, but my kids are great. And so far, the first 3 days of in-home quarantine and distance learning is going smoothly.
That's it. You just got to do the best you can. Brittany, how about you? You've had a bit of a change of life in terms of how you deliver your classwork to your students, right?
Yeah, it's I would say it's been quite a drastic change here. One, because the state of Maine was a little bit behind other states when it came to positive tests for the virus, and so our first positive case was last week, and it's accelerated quite quickly over the last couple of days. So there's been a lot of drastic measures with companies and businesses closing, curfews, things like that. But yes, for those that don't know, I guess my day job is as a professor, and I had been teaching this particular class that the classes that I'm teaching right now in person. We have had to transition online. So the last week or so, when our spring break has been extended, for lack of a better word, it's not really an extension. It's more of, here's a little bit of extra time to try to take all of this, because the way you format an in-person class is very different than how you would format an online class. So it's been a long week, but we are hanging in there. And yeah, we'll just see kids technically come back next week. So we'll see what happens then.
There you go. Okay, well, yeah, it's all you can do is kind of just roll with it. And, I tell you that the thing that's most upsetting for me is what the stock market's doing with it, which is utter, panic, mayhem. And, obviously businesses are hugely impacted in all of this. And so I can see, the reaction, but it seems like the severity isn't rational. We had an otherwise booming and healthy economy prior to this. What should technically be a temporary situation, not permanent. So I'm a little bummed by that. But other than that, I've got 2 college kids home now, and nice having them around. So that's kind of nice. I'll take it. And but yeah, they're planning to go back. It's like first or second week of April. So. Anyways, yeah, Chris, you're also reacting a little bit with your job as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my day job again is for a police department for university. So I am involved with a lot of the emergency operations. So I've been in just wall-to-wall meetings, planning, trying to get ahead of things, but never really being able to get ahead of things just because the situation's developing so rapidly. There's new news coming in every hour with decisions being made and cases popping up that have to be reacted to. And then because it's not just a university, but a university system, there's all the campuses to consider, and each one's going to have their own cases. And it's been a lot, but I think we've finally got some signs of normalcy returning soon, hopefully. So
he has the glass of wine too.
Yes. Very good. Yes, you need to stay lubricated when things get stressful. So
Right.
that's important. That's important. I have a cold IPA going myself right now. But let's dive in before we digress too much into the day's current events with the global landscape and all that stuff with viruses. Let's talk about some tech. Let's get our head out of that drama and talk about some tech, some exciting tech that's been bubbling these days on the interwebs, and that we've covered in detail. Some good stuff from the folks at AMD. AMD launches Ryzen 4000 series for laptops. Zen 2 Mobile unleashed with big performance gains. Marco, you took a look at this thing, Zen 2 Mobile. So we don't have shipping product in the market yet, but it is getting very close and looking very good, right?
Yes, absolutely. So on Monday, a few companies started taking pre-orders for Ryzen 4000 series powered notebooks. So they are getting close. And we were able to disclose many of the architectural details. Now, we know that it's based on Zen 2. We've known that for a long time. And we know that the U series, even the low-power U series, was up to 8 cores, 16 threads. So it sounds like, they're just leveraging the same 8-core chiplet that's used in the desktop, but it's, rejiggered for mobile. But that's not the case. This particular design was designed for mobile basically from the ground up. So there's lots of little tweaks inside the architecture to save power and to allow it to switch into and out of, boost modes into different power states. And all told, what you end up with is, now we haven't tested it, so I should preface that if we reference any performance data or power numbers here, this is all stuff provided by AMD. We haven't tested independently yet. We expect to soon, but all the buzz is very good. We've talked to many partners. There's lots of good buzz surrounding the Ryzen 4000 series. But yeah, we're looking at a really relatively powerful mobile chip, arguably what I think is going to be AMD's best mobile offering yet. And yeah, so you take all of the goodness that's in the Ryzen 3000 series desktop processors, you sprinkle in some Infinity Fabric updates to save power, some new monitoring tools inside the CPU to check for activity and to turbo boost accordingly. Plus, there's new tech that allows the chip to boost for longer periods and to scale back in smaller increments. So in aggregate, you end up with the chip running at faster speeds longer. And all told, we're looking at what seems to be a really high performance, competitive on power mobile part from AMD. We've seen machines now from Dell and Lenovo. We had machines in our hands, live at CES. We had plenty of picks already. Basically, everything AMD saying looks good right now. So I'm really looking forward to testing it.
Yeah. And so impressive sort of claims they're making in the benchmarks. I don't know, Chris, if you can maybe pull up one of the charts. It's kind of hard to see it, but obviously AMD is there on the right side with those orange and deep red bars. And then Intel, and you could maybe click to the full view, Chris, maybe get a closer view. But Intel is, there you go. Intel Ice Lake is in the
It's
baby
not quite
blue.
lined up with my snapshot, but close enough.
Close enough, yeah. And then you've even got a 6-core 10th generation Core i7 10710U processor in there as well. And obviously AMD is showing in just about every metric, whether it be gaming processor-related gaming performance and 3D Mark Time Spy, or Cinebench for multi-threaded throughput. They're beating Intel's architecture handily. Now, my takeaway from this was that you're talking about an 8-core chip, right? Versus the 4 and 6-core chips in those bar graphs. But when you talk about in the same power envelope and for theoretically competitive pricing, we haven't seen how laptops are going to be priced yet. Or have we? Did we get a little bit of that information? Anyways, it's looking really compelling. Throwing more cores at it, perhaps, but compelling. Is that a fair assessment based on what the folks at AMD have made claims with?
Yeah, it looks real compelling. And, to your point that AMD is comparing 8 cores to maybe 6 or 4 cores, Intel doesn't have 8 cores in this power envelope. You got to go to the really high end, the more, higher end gaming notebooks rather than these mainstream thinner machines that AMD is using for comparison here. You don't see an Ice Lake chip in the big monster gaming notebooks. So that's, sort of a competitive advantage right now for AMD. And there's just so many little tweaks in this architecture. We have some use case battery life estimates in the article. We go through all of the tweaks to the memory controller, which now supports lower power LPDDR4 at higher speeds. And now that's really important for the integrated GPU, because they share system memory. So when you have more system bandwidth there, memory bandwidth for the system, that boosts graphics performance. But it's also an enhanced 7-nanometer version of Vega in these chips. And with all of the tweaks to the architecture, AMD is claiming up to 59% higher performance per compute unit. Now, there's only a max of 8 compute units, where the previous gen, I think, went up to 10. But with the architectural advantages, with the higher speed memory, with the clock speed advantages, it's actually faster with fewer number of CUs. And then there's like tons of little tweaks throughout. We've talked about Smart Shift before, where the CPU and GPU and even a discrete GPU can share power. So they both can run at optimal speeds without basically overloading the cooling in the notebook. And that's independent of the OS. That's in the firmware. It's something AMD engineered into the platform. We should also mention that with the announcement Monday of the pre-order, AMD announced a new SKU. Now, when we were at CES, and I think we talked about this a couple of podcasts ago, we saw a couple of mentions of a Ryzen 9 4900 that were denied when we asked AMD, but it has since been announced. So if you just saw the CES announcements for the lineup that topped out at the Ryzen 7 4800H, there's now a newer model as well, the Ryzen 9 4900H and HS, and those can boot. It's also 8-core, same number of cache, same number of graphics cores, but up to 4.4 gigahertz boost. So a higher performance chip. That one's going to end up in more powerful gaming machines or content creation type notebooks. But really, from every angle you look at this, it seems like an incredibly compelling mobile offering. What's really interesting is if you come by the site, check out the article, look at the battery life use cases, you'll see in mainstream workloads, again, this is according to AMD, in mainstream workloads, it appears Ryzen 4000 offers better battery life characteristics than Ice Lake. But as you go to more taxing stuff or even idle use cases, Intel still has the advantage. So it's really, really interesting stuff. It seems in aggregate very well balanced, and in aggregate it appears, according to AMD's estimates, that Ryzen may offer better battery life, but that's all stuff we still have to test.
Yeah.
And that's a complete departure from previous gen AMD notebooks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And really what you talked about there is better performance, theoretically competitive pricing, and comparable battery life, as long as you're not taxing all those cores. Are we looking at a case where finally AMD may be able to put a chink in Intel's armor when it comes to mobile market share? Because Intel has dominated that space for so long. Sure, AMD has had its run in the desktop here and there, but never really chipped off a significant piece of market share for notebooks. Are we looking at the potential for that?
This is the time. They have 100 over 100 design wins. The buzz is there. I don't think they're fudging any of these numbers, so it appears the efficiency and performance will be there. We know they're going to be competitive on price. We know they have some really cool tech in regards to graphics and sharing power, which, we're also hearing that even a fairly powerful gaming class notebook using SmartShift and leveraging some of the cool graphics tech in AMD's Radeon drivers like Radeon Chill and, frame rate limiting, getting multiple hours gaming on a gaming, and that's like unheard of on most gaming notebooks now. So seems like there's lots of good stuff here. It seems like there's some big partners on board here. It's not just a smattering of AMD notebooks. They're claiming 100+ design wins. This could be the one where AMD makes a big dent in mobile. We'll know soon enough.
Yeah, that's a huge opportunity for them. Certainly the data center and mobile. They've already made inroads on the desktop, but the data center and mobile are sort of untapped still. They're starting to make inroads in data center, but mobile would be huge when you think about volume and mainstream users and use cases. Brittany, any thoughts here? Is this something you'd consider for a laptop for you, or is this more a little bit heavier duty kind of stuff? Do you like a thinner and lighter machine, or I guess how does this work for you? Anything?
You're muted.
Oh, did we lose her?
She's muted.
There we go. Okay. I'm a little tired.
That's okay.
Yeah, I tend to prefer a thinner and lighter machine, but given all that's going on, many of us may be completely online now, so I might be favoring a bulkier machine soon. I like the idea of, in fact, I will probably soon be in the market for like a new laptop, and so one thing I've been considering is the kind of work that I do has changed over the last couple of years. When I initially bought the laptop that I have, I wasn't video editing or photo editing or anything like that. So a larger laptop, something along the lines of what AMD is producing, is definitely something that's piquing my interest. It'll just, I think, largely depend on pricing. That's kind of the big thing, whether or not it'll be within my price range.
Yeah, and I didn't want to let anybody astray there. There's going to be thin and light machines certainly with this product line from AMD. It's a 15-watt TDP, so certainly thin and lights are available as well. I just think of some of the the chops in the higher end machines where you've got an 8-core CPU at your disposal. But you made a good point. It's price points, and so far AMD has been a price leader on the desktop, price performance leader on the desktop with certainly with their 3rd generation Ryzen processor. So I think we should expect that trend to continue, but the question is going to be how aggressive is that pricing? It could be really, really attractive because historically you could get some AMD SKUs in various notebooks, but they were really less than premium machines. They're sort of mainstream, not the best most premium materials or the most premium displays. It'd be really nice to see an AMD powered machine with top end design and build quality and display and all that good stuff to go with it. A real premium machine. So
what if I told you there was the possibility of a relatively high end gaming class notebook with discrete Navi, with the top end 8-core chip, with all the goodness that you expect, leveraging all of this tech for under $1,000?
How do you know this?
I would say you've piqued my interest.
I would say stay tuned.
I would say under $1,000 sounds like it might be in my price range.
Yeah, I think I know which machine you're speaking of. I just didn't know the price point, and we'll leave it at that.
I should say around 1,000, just in case they decide to make a little money on it.
Yeah, that's good stuff. It's good stuff for sure. And what's also beneficial with this is that this is going to keep Intel on its toes when it comes to mobile platform. What's that, Chris? Are you moaning over there?
Yeah, I've got Freckles barking in the background and trying to get her to be
Our
quiet.
dog
So
is currently in timeout because she decided to go play in the mud. And so she is currently drying off in our mud room and therefore feels the need to bark at everything and everyone that could possibly come within. I mean, we're social distancing, but she wants everyone to know exactly our location.
And Freckles is a sweet but not so petite Great Dane.
She's a Saint Bernard.
Saint Bernard. That's right. One of those other
Saint
big
Bernard.
dogs.
Yeah. She's very sweet, but not petite. No, she's not.
She's a big dog. Does she drool like most Saint Bernards?
No, not really. And she's a short-haired Saint Bernard, so she doesn't. I mean, she sheds. Don't get me wrong. There's usually piles the size of a Chihuahua in our house, but not as much as a long-haired.
She's so big, she sheds Chihuahuas.
Basically.
Love it. Well, hey, I love dogs. Dogs are the best. They're the best people. But yeah, let's. All right. Well, I think we should wrap on that. But any other tidbits, Marco, before we move on? Did we miss any criticals?
We didn't miss any criticals. I didn't go deep into some of the changes. Definitely come by the site and read the architecture piece. There's lots of little nuance. This isn't just the same chip in desktop chopped down and shoved into a mobile device. So definitely come by the site and read the architecture piece that we have up.
There you go. Link is in the chat, and you can check that out at hothardware.com. Good stuff. Marco is on the launch pad, so to speak. He's gearing up for when we can actually talk about specific performance in specific machines from OEMs and ecosystem partners, retail ready, purchasable stuff. So stay tuned in the days and weeks ahead, coming soon to a webpage near you. All right.
Yes, sir.
So let's move on. Let's move on to mobile real quick, and I'm going to talk about my good friends at Samsung who have released a line of phones that Marco, you and I saw in New York one day a few weeks back, and were thoroughly impressed. But I've since gotten a chance to kick the tires and light the fires on Samsung's Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G, big, bold, and tricked out, and indeed it is. Chris, I don't know if we're shifting gears on you, but that review is live currently at hothardware.com. I'll toss it into the chat. There we go. There it is. I'm
all ahead of you.
There it is in my grubby mitts right there. That is the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G. That is the big boy. It's a 6.9-inch display. The S20 Plus is the 6.7-inch display, and the S20 Standard is a 6.4-inch display. I think, again, perhaps the most impressive thing about this phone is what Samsung does with displays. The 6.9-inch Infinity O dynamic AMOLED display that's in this device is absolutely stupendous. They make the best smartphone displays, hands down, period. That's my opinion, and I think the opinion of more than just me. A few folks like DisplayMate, I think, rates them pretty well. There's my buddy Yogi. There's my little pooch, crazy Jack Russell Terrier, and he's on that display. As you can see, there's a single punch out on the front-facing camera there, little bullet hole punch out that disrupts only the most minute amount of that display area coverage, but also, as you can see, very little bezel, damn near zero bezel, and only slightly curved at the edges. I like what Samsung has done now in terms of industrial design for this phone. It used to be that the big thing was this, super sharp curved edge on the display, and they even have the Edge app, to bring in a little utility tray for favorite apps. That's still there, but they've sort of tamed back that curve. I think it maintains a very comfortable feel in the hand, but gives you less distortion on the very edges of the display where they do have a slight curve. Super well built. This phone has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. As you can see, there's a combo SIM SD card tray, so storage is expandable. I am working with the, let's see, I think it's 128 gig storage, a 12 gig RAM setup, but there's also a 512 gig and 16 gig of RAM setup, powered by Snapdragon 865. So performance is top notch, healthy RAM complement backing it up, and a big battery. The other thing about that display, which I skipped, is it's also 120 hertz capable, or 60 hertz. There's actually a toggle setting in the settings menus. You can go 120 or 60 hertz. I did some battery life testing. Certainly cuts back. I think it took back about 3 hours of battery life by switching to 120 hertz. But the perception, and the fluidness and the smoothness at 120 hertz is exceptional. And you still get, like, I think it was something like 9+ hours, 10 hours of battery life. At 60 hertz, it was one of the top phones we've ever tested. Number 2, actually, of all time, as you can see in that bar graph. So, super, good battery life, great build quality, great display. And then, of course, the camera. You've got a 108 megapixel standard shooter in the back. It's got a wide angle lens, and it's also got a telephoto lens. I think it's 40 megapixel on the telephoto. And the camera is impressive in terms of its capabilities. You can do things like space zoom, where you take a picture and or you line up in space zoom mode, and it's actually using a 10x hybrid optical digital zoom, and then up to 100x digital zoom on top of that. The camera actually has a prism technology. It actually bends light, and that's how they get that. It's really more like a 4x standard optical zoom, but they achieve a 10x effect optically with that, bending that light inside that camera. But then they apply the digital zoom to get you that 100x zoom. And because you're shooting at 108 megapixels, you've got serious pixel density to do that with. So you can get some interesting things, some interesting shot effects with that. Got to have a real steady hand. I think Chris just showed you a few pictures there. I don't know if you could go back to it, Chris. I was trying to explain that camera technology. There you go. So the statue there is an interesting shot. As you can see, the crop on the top is full view, a full view shot. It's on a table next to the clock. Then when you zoom in, the next level down is a 10x zoom. 10x and 30x space zoom. And then the very bottom shot is the 100x space zoom, which looks frankly like a pastel painting. It's really kind of blotchy and blurry, and the AI actually renders that because you can't keep your hand still enough to shoot a 100x zoom shot, to be honest. It's just, you'd need a tripod. You need to use the timer on a tripod, and even then, it's really difficult to get that 100x zoom, but it can create some pretty interesting sort of, results, and you can actually see from that far away. I had to back up across the room to get that shot, but you can see the detail. That's a mural on the wing of St. Michael the Archangel's wing. So it's small detail on this statue that you can now zoom in on. So interesting stuff, very powerful camera. Camera has some issues currently. I believe it's firmware related, or I should say firmware fixable. We noted some off-color issues with it in terms of getting white balance correct. There's a good shot that shows that. A little bit of trouble with white balance, and not just in low light situations. It really depends. I think outdoors it was generally better, but I think it depends on how the scene optimizer, reacts to the shot. And so I think Samsung's got some work to do there, but otherwise a very powerful phone with a very feature-rich camera that has the potential to compete with anything Google Pixel 4 series offers, except for a little bit of work that needs to be done by the folks at Samsung on that white balance issue. But yeah, the other thing about this phone, unfortunately, is that it's very expensive. So $1399 for this config that I have. I think it goes up to $1499 or thereabouts, $1,500 for the full, 512 gig, 16 gig of RAM, 512 gig of storage. The base Galaxy S20 retails for $1,000, so that's the 6.4 inch display. S20 Plus, I think, is somewhere in between there. I want to say $1,200. Samsung makes really beautiful phones, and that's one of the things. I'll hold it up here, show it to you. One of the things that kind of gets me, and then I want to get your take on it, guys. This phone is so well built, so beautiful to just, I mean, it's really a bauble. You pick it up and you're like, whoa, it's just really made very nice. And the display is just beautiful. So that's what gets me every time is Samsung's build quality. Certainly the performance with Snapdragon 865 is great. Camera's got a little bit of work to do, but it's a very capable camera. If you can justify the cost, that's the big caveat, I think. So there you go. Quick summary. Any thoughts, Marco? I know you saw it. Maybe not such a quick summary. You laughing at me?
No, I actually have two thoughts. So I agree with everything Dave says. Absolutely gorgeous device. Something that I've discovered screwing around with photography recently. I upgraded my camera gear, and I've just been messing around with photography a lot lately. And I'm experimenting with an app called Topaz D Noise Ai. It's basically a really powerful denoiser for apps. That leverages AI technology. And if you overdo the settings in Topaz D Noise, you end up with a shot that looks like that 100x zoom on the Archangel's wing. So I think that funky quality is totally over processing on Samsung's side to clear up the blur from making it so difficult. Yeah, that's exactly why I see that. And the second thing I want to say is, in regards to the software, Samsung's done such a good job lately with their software. I think they actually get a bad rap. Lots of comments you see on stories about Samsung's too much bloat with their software. It is bunk, man. I just want to say I recently switched off a OnePlus 7T to a Note 10. The Note 10 is night and day a better experience, in my opinion.
Wow.
I know I switched to OnePlus because the hype was there. Everybody was loving it. And I really love the performance of the OnePlus 7T. Oh my gosh, is the Note 10 a better experience? And for me, I guess I'm just used to Samsung, but if you're contemplating a high-end flagship phone and you're reading reviews and opinions and, maybe Samsung's previous software, I don't know, overskinning is maybe a word. It's still seeped into some people's minds and they're giving you a negative impression of what Samsung's done here. Don't listen. Go try the phones. See if you like it for yourself, because I think they did a really good job.
Yeah, and I want to get what Brittany thinks about this too, but I want to answer one question in the chat, and then also talk about that software as well. I would agree with you that Samsung's One UI, I think it's version 2.1 right now. It's very refined. It's very well done. Oxygen OS for me, I really like on OnePlus. I know there's some folks that are used to certain hooks in what I would call skinned Android. If you're an Android purist where you come from a Pixel device, OnePlus is probably the most, I guess, stripped down, pure version of an OS that's got a few hooks and bells and whistles in it to address the features of the phone beyond the OS itself. So they're probably the lightest skin out there. That's just my view. And so if you're used to having something that hops on top of Android and gives you those bells and whistles and hooks, yeah, you might be missing some things. But at any rate, long story short, I agree with you. I think it's a situation where, Chris is muting the stream to cut down barking dogs. I think it's a situation where if you're okay with a skin to handle the capabilities of a phone, certainly Samsung really does well with the One UI. It's a far cry certainly from previous OS generations of old with Samsung. Then there was another question in the chat: is autofocusing bad, or autofocusing is bad? Someone was making that claim. Xing X57. I would say I did see some issues with autofocusing, but only in the 8K shot mode. Interestingly enough, this thing shoots 8K video, and it's useful from a standpoint, especially if you want to catch video plus some stills. So you can shoot video and then grab stills from the video. You can just roll video and then, not worry about having to get a still shot and switching modes. Kind of nice. I don't see the utility in 8K, and I did see some auto-focusing issues with that. It seemed like the camera and phone setup was having a tough time keeping up with recording at that mode. So autofocusing suffered a little bit. 4K 60 autofocusing looked sublime. It was beautiful. I didn't see any autofocusing issues in the still shot mode. I could go back and look at this again, but I didn't really determine that to be an issue. Brittany, what are your thoughts on the Galaxy S20 series? I know you folks are Moto G types up there in Maine, right?
Well, we used to be, but then the battery kind of went downhill.
Oh, really? Okay. Wow.
It kind of did.
The Moto Z Play ain't what it used to be.
Yeah. I have a Google Pixel 3 XL. I love it. It's a great device for me. I kind of have, so I'm giving these thoughts having not used the S20. So I just kind of want to put that caveat out there. This may be an unpopular opinion, but I actually don't love the, I guess, bezel-less devices, or the goal to make everything bezel-less. Partly because I pretty much always put a case on my phone at some point, because I'm terrified of dropping it and breaking it, especially when you have a device at that price point. So I'm kind of like, that's cool, but for me on a practical everyday level, I'm not sure that is super useful to me, because I'm probably going to put a case on it anyway because I don't want to break it. And yeah, the camera, I think the camera for me is kind of a sticking point. So I'd like to see what they end up doing with it. What they end up doing with I think you mentioned it was kind of a firmware issue. I like to see what they end up doing with that, just because while I do enjoy, we have DSLRs here. We love photography in this household. I do like also having the ability to take a really good photo. And especially given where we live, with all the outdoors and things like that, I'm frequently taking photos with my phone if I don't have my camera on me. So I'm curious to see what they do with that. But yeah, like I said, unpopular opinion, but the bezel-less doesn't hook me.
That's cool. It's whatever, whatever your industrial design preference is. That I get it. Honestly, I was surprised with the camera issue and I think they'll come back quickly with an update. I have always experienced, and I've been one of those sort of, I don't want to say apologists, but my eye liked what Samsung produces. And they've sort of always been occasionally criticized for producing an oversaturated sort of I want to use the word cartoony image reproduction. And I've always thought, yeah, sure, you can say Samsung's shot quality in the Galaxy 10, 9, whatever series tends to be a little bit punchier and more saturated, but I always found Pixel series phones to be drab, and people call it accurate, so it's beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so to speak.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, but they call it, it's been called very accurate, and I would agree with that. I think the reality is probably somewhere in the middle, but I've always enjoyed what Samsung produces, and I liked the extra saturation and pop personally. However, with this phone, there's something amiss, and I think it's been widely reported that the camera's got issues. The camera's got a ton of potential, and I hope they come back quickly with that, with that fix. And it's really about post processing. It's about color balance and post processing of the image. Because they're capturing the pixels in fine fidelity. It's just a question of how you process them afterwards. So that's fixable in firmware. I hope that comes quickly, because there's a lot of potential with the camera, and they do some pretty cool tricks. They have another mode called single take, where you can point the camera at a subject, especially like a moving subject. Maybe it's your dog, maybe it's Freckles, and it'll analyze the scene, and then you tap and hold for a couple seconds on the camera button, and it grabs a bunch of stills as well as a video clip, and then the AI, the camera, machine learning algorithm itself will determine what it thinks are the best shots and recommend them to you. And I want to say it's like, four stills and a couple videos, or up to 5 and 10 or something like that. There's a mix of shots that will show on the screen, and you can pick which you want to save or share. So it's pretty cool. I mean, they do some pretty novel things with it, with the camera, and I think there's a lot of potential there. Any other things before we move on, Marco? We've been beating this drum a little bit.
Yeah, I think we're good. I think we covered it. Come by the site, check out the full review. Dave has a multi-page piece up with samples for everything. So if you need more, come by Hot Hardware.
Yeah, lots of camera samples. That's what I always struggle with these reviews is, really articulating, what the camera can do in a lot of different settings. And I try and, mix it up as much as possible, but it's not an easy task. Because bright light, low light, mixed light, portrait mode on this camera is great. There's just lots to digest. So stop by the site, check it out, and hopefully you'll learn a little something about the Galaxy S20 series from Samsung. I think, and just to sort of cap this off, I think the best buy recommendation for the series would be the S20 Plus or the S20 Standard. Unless you like a really big phone, this is a 6.9-inch phone. It's very efficient in terms of bezel. So it's smaller than perhaps you might think for a 6.9-inch display, but it's still a big phone. Stepping down to the 6.7-inch S20 Plus or the 6.4-inch S20, I think you're going to be fine in terms of screen real estate, and you'll save a bunch of bucks to do that. So I would check that out. I think the camera capabilities, you still get up to 30x space zoom. You're going to be fine. I think you'd be pleasantly surprised at the build quality and the performance at that price point. Is the value, the ROI is probably a little bit better. So let's move on. Let's talk about gaming level up, the benefits of upgrading integrated graphics with our friends at EVGA and ASUS. So Ben Funk, one of our illustrious editors, has taken it upon himself to examine what it's like to take a mainstream, integrated graphics equipped desktop PC, drop in really an entry-level graphics card to see what you can get in terms of game playability and return on your investment for a couple $300. Marco, what do you know about this? And is it worth the effort, or should you just rip it all up and get a new system?
This is a really cool piece. Normally, when we test graphics cards, we plug them into the most powerful desktop PC we have to eliminate the CPU bottleneck, or at least minimize the CPU bottleneck, so we can really show the performance differential between GPUs. Ben took a different approach here. He had a couple of mainstream desktops. One is a relatively high performance, Core i5 9600K, and then maybe something a little lower performance, a Ryzen 3 2200G. Lots of people have mainstream machines with these type of CPUs in them that are leveraging the integrated graphics, and they're like, hey, do I need to scrap this if I want a game? And I think Ben answers that question. The answer is no, because you can get some really cool performance. So he tested 5600 XT, 6600, 1660 class GeForces, 5500 XT, and 1650 class GeForces. And what you see, obviously, is all of these GPUs absolutely crushing integrated Intel graphics. We should also mention in some of the tests, he tests the Intel integrated at 720p versus 1080p with the discrete GPUs, just because the 720p is even still too slow. He has the 1080p data in there too, but no one's going to game at 2.1 frames per second. But it's in there to see the direct comparison. And yeah, even with these mainstream CPUs, you can get some pretty nice, smooth frame rates in lots of games available today. So no, you don't have to scrap your PC. As long as you have a slot and a power supply that can support the graphics card you're looking for, go ahead and plug it in, enjoy some games.
So you make a good point. Power supply that can support it. Most folks, if you've got a desktop machine, let's say it's a pre-built from whoever, are they going to have the power budget available with a machine that's got integrated graphics, or are we looking at maybe having to transplant that too?
I would guess most have the power budget. If I take my 9900K test rig that I use for mainstream Intel testing and for storage testing, when that's idling without a GPU, it's like 37 watts. So even if you have a mainstream system with, let's say it came with, I don't know, a 375 watt power supply, that's probably below the spec some of the GPU guys are recommending.
There is a gotcha in there.
There is a gotcha. You need the power connectors also.
Yes, the power connectors are a big one because a lot of these pre-built systems, they're just going to have the cables you need to make it run out of the box and nothing more.
I was getting there, Chris. I was getting there, man.
I got a little overeager.
I was getting there. But yeah, I think they have the power. But as Chris mentions, you may need adapters or some splitters. Maybe you get lucky and it has the PCIe power connector. Probably not. But you can grab Molex splitter and Molex adapters for a couple bucks.
Yeah. Brittany, do you let Chris upgrade your PCs at home, or you say, no, get me a new one? Damn it.
That's dirty.
When we have the budget, no. The thing I want to add is I think this is a really cool article. I think Ben did a really good job, and I would just kind of encourage people to go look at it because he's very thorough, and it's a dare I say unique article. It's really interesting.
Yeah. No, Ben does a great job. He does. He's a sharp cookie, and he really digs in deep with what I feel is the sort of detail you need. So if you're new to this, and that's obviously who we targeted this piece for. If you're new to the upgrade and the DIY circuit, check it out because Ben will help put you in the know. Good stuff. And Marco, I don't know, stepping back real quick, do you have an opinion at the $200 to $300 price point? What is the best value GPU out there, or GPUs? Maybe I'll give you the leeway of going two.
I am always of the opinion that you should buy the absolute fastest GPU that fits your budget, right? And even if that means stretching your budget, if it means stretching your budget $20, I know I don't want to spend other people's money and act like $20 is not, a lot of money for some people. But if you can go for a 5600 class GPU or a RTX 2060 class GPU, that's really the sweet spot where there's really minimal compromise and you get that strong performance. If you absolutely can't go to that price range, a 5500 XT or a 1660 Super is where it's at.
Yeah. Good stuff. Swing on by, check it out, and learn a little bit about what you can do with the hardware you have. How about cores before we close out? 4 to 6 CPU cores, enough, generally speaking, the game?
Yeah. I mean, if you see that Ryzen 3 basically handling the modern games, is it going to be as good as a high-end chip? No. Quad cores should be enough for most games. Better to have more because you have to remember any background task in Windows is also using a thread. So you'll have fewer hiccups and stutters if you have some of those additional cores, if there's background stuff going on. If you're building a new machine, don't go for below 6 cores today. But if you have a quad core, you're fine slapping a nice GPU in there and getting your game on.
Yeah, good stuff. Slap a GPU in there, learn a little something, and breathe some new life into your desktop. Good stuff. Hey, let's move on to something that's near and dear to Brittany's heart. Working from home, the guide, top tips for maximum productivity. So folks are thinking about this big time lately. Everybody's told stay home from work. Okay, great. Now I've got to go do this. Set myself in this mode and be disciplined. And it takes a lot of discipline. But there's more to it than that. There's a lot of nuance that can get you, up and running faster and more productive. And Brittany's going to tell us the secrets.
Yes. Well, Ben told us the secrets. I'm going to relay Ben's message. So once again, by our illustrious editor, Ben, he did a good job breaking down both tips for people who are in tech and for people who are not in tech. So I think this article can really apply to anybody who now finds themselves in a situation where, for at least the foreseeable future, they're working from home. So some of the tips he includes basically for everybody is one, as much as you can, try to maintain a daily routine, either the routine that you had or whatever your new reality is. Having a dedicated area, and of course he included pictures of Dave's office and Marco's office, but having a dedicated area, even if you don't have a home office, even setting up a corner in your bedroom, your dining room table, wherever you can, but having a dedicated workspace can really bump up your productivity. Have some boundaries, especially since a lot of kids are now at home, a lot of teenagers are now at home. So really indicating when you are working as opposed to when you are available for them. Taking breaks and really taking them, because one thing I know I've struggled with in the past is when you work from home, it's really tempting to want to go and do all the chores and all the things you need to do in your house, right? Like, man, I can just go do a quick load of laundry and come back really quickly. But the fact of the matter is you really want to build those into actual breaks and not just feel pressured to go out and about, and try to do chores at the same time you're trying to complete work. And also realizing that inevitably there's going to be breaks, there's going to be interruption in productivity, because simply working at home is just a different beast than working in an office. Now, Ben also includes some tips if you work in IT, or I would say in this case, work in a field where you're dealing with some sensitive data. Using a VPN can be really valuable, especially if you're now using your home internet network as opposed to the network you would use at work. Doing things like having a dedicated PC, a dedicated, either desktop or laptop, especially for confidential material that you may not want to get into other people's hands. He also mentioned that quite a few people, big businesses like Microsoft, are publishing their own guides because for many of them, they've already been doing this for quite some time. Of course, we're not going to be having a lot of in-person meetings. So really familiarizing yourself with tools like Skype and Zoom, preparing a dedicated workspace. He includes a lot about different tools so that you're not, hurting your wrist, all that type of stuff. And then washing your hands. People, wash your hands, please. But it's a very, very thorough article. Like I said, he goes over things that I think can really apply to just about anyone who finds themselves in this situation, and people who are in IT or dealing with sensitive information, and now they're working at home and they have to find a way to protect it. So very, very thorough article.
Yeah, good stuff for sure. Thanks,
Yes.
Brittany. That's a great summary. And
Thank you.
And it's funny, we're poking at that, wash your hands bullet because it's so like, coronavirus, whatever, theme of the day. But it's really true, because when you're talking about working with computers, and I mean, that's why you're here probably listening to us right now, right? When you lay down your hands on that keyboard, if they've been mucking around and whatever, maybe it's taking out the trash or whatever, you're bringing that and it's staying on your work equipment. And sure, you need to wipe down and clean things as you go, but the best medicine is, prevention, right? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That's the saying. So yeah, literally, like before you muck with that keyboard, make sure your hands are clean. And it's tough too. I oftentimes I will eat at my desk. You'll have a salad or whatever, and then you want to, eat and then go to the keyboard and just keep working. No, it's not a great idea. You should just even if it takes that 10 or 15 minute break to eat something, then go to work, clean up your hands and then go to work. It's simple hygiene kind of stuff that people don't think about. You just kind of dive in. And the other thing that occurred to me with this is, folks are concerned about, and Marco, I want to get your opinion on this, because I know working from home like you have, and I have for the better part of, for me, it's probably been 15 years. For you, it's been the full 20, close to it, right? That we've been around. Over 20 years we've been around at Hot Hardware. But what I've found is that some folks struggle with productivity and staying focused and on task at home. I find after years of doing it, and once you get practiced with it, some folks can actually go the other way. Like I literally have to get myself up and go, okay, stop, go outside, see the sun, you know, do something other than work for 5 minutes to get your brain recalibrated, because you can be so maniacally focused because the work is there from you and you can't escape it. It's home with you, that you just forget to breathe. Like you're just living in the zone all day long. And there's plenty of times, especially when we're crunching, Marco, where it's like, okay, I got to go try and find myself as a human, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you end up putting in so many hours because you're in your house and you're just doing your thing, and you completely get lost in what you're doing. But yeah, I force myself, that little tidbit in Ben's piece about making your breaks productive. That was one of my suggestions, because that's something that keeps me sane. I have
That's
two
what I
little
do
kids.
too.
Yeah, I have two little kids. I have the dog. I'm here by myself most of the time, and the door will ring or whatever. You kind of have to embrace the interruptions because they're going to happen. You're not living in a bubble, and turn them into productive time. Like if you were the type of person where you were commuting 45 minutes each way before you started working from home, you now have 90 minutes worth of interruptions, and you still break even if you're putting in your 8-hour work day.
That's a good point.
So embrace those interruptions, do something productive during them, because it's sometimes if you try to jump right back in, you can't. So go do something else, bang it out, feel like even something simple, emptying the sink, emptying the dishwasher, something fast.
Right, switching over the laundry.
Yeah, and then come back and just get back to work. And in the beginning, I agree with what Brittany was saying earlier. When I first started to do this working from home, I was still living with my parents. I had the second floor of the house because I have a huge family. And people would, my nephews would come upstairs and say hi. My parents would come check on me. And I'm like, people, I'm working. Stop. They're like, but you're just sitting there with the laptop. I'm like, but I'm working. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
It took a while to get everybody trained.
Yeah. One thing I want to add too, because I'm a workaholic. I confess it. I own it. I'm a workaholic. I think another thing too, for a lot of people who are now transitioning into working from home, if you are able to, and I understand not everyone can do this because you have kids and other responsibilities, have, if you can, hard start times, hard end times, and take off your weekends if you can, because otherwise, your work and your home life start to meld together. So it's really tempting to just keep going, right? Because you already have your laptop in front of you. And I know I'm like that, and I have to set hard time limits. So that would be my other thing I'd want to add to it, if I could add something to Ben's already very thorough piece.
Dave, you're good at that, right?
Oh, dude. I'm from the Bill Belichick school of whatever, no days off. It's horrible, and I need to get better at it. It's tough. I think if you're working for quote unquote the man or the woman, as the case may be, corporate culture, it's easy to just say, okay, weekend. If you're a business owner and you run your own ship, it's real hard. And I don't even, my head isn't ever fully out of it, even when I'm on vacation. And I do regret that ability to disconnect my brain sometimes. It's like anything else. There's pros and cons. The flip side of that is I work for myself. I'm, intrinsically motivated. Marco, you're the same way, and so, we all have our own little business, and that's cool. But yeah, it's totally healthy. You have to do that. You have to force yourself to do that where you can. I wish I was better at it. And but really good tips, folks. I mean, Brittany and Marco, when you get up, and Marco, you touched on something that's hugely important for human psychology. When you do have a break, do something productive, even if it's a small, quick chore, because as you accomplish stuff during the day, it fuels you. It makes you positive biased in your brain. I'm knocking stuff out, and so it just you start getting that momentum naturally as a result of that.
And the other side benefit, if these were all little things you used to do after getting home from work, if they're all banged out by the time you stop working, you can now enjoy your evening and not have to worry about doing anything else. So just something to consider.
There you go. Something to consider. Well, I think we're at the bottom of the hour, and we're going to miss our last little bullet. Interesting piece. We'll just mention it real quickly. I'm going to drop it in the chat right here. Tim Sweeney comes out in defense of NVIDIA GeForce NOW and trashes Google and Apple's money grab. Basically, it's something you should read up on. There's lots of opinions, lots of sort of sides of the coin in this. And I think the moral of the story is we've got this thing called cloud gaming now. It's real. It's capable. It does, what the pie in the sky, hope was that we could achieve. And because of high bandwidth networks and low latency and all that good stuff and the ability to stream games, it's real, and there's lots of ecosystems developing. Google Stadia, Microsoft xCloud, and certainly GeForce Now for NVIDIA. Where you take your games, where you can play them, that's all at stake, and you should be involved in the community as a result of that. You've got a stake in this. You've got skin in the game, so to speak. And so read up, learn, and sort of keep yourself informed, because the landscape is shaping quickly. And I don't know. I don't want to get into it too much more than that, but I don't know if you want to add to that, Marco, but we'll close out after that little diatribe.
Yeah, I'll just quickly want to add, Tim Sweeney's right. He's right for ripping Apple and Google. I also want to say the game devs are kind of being a little shady. They were cool when NVIDIA was giving the service away, but as soon as NVIDIA starts making a little money on a really cool service they were giving away for years, all of a sudden it's not cool to have their games there, even though these gamers may already own those games through their Steam library. So it's kind of shady, but it's all going to shake out eventually, and the best service will win. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I don't. Go ahead, Britt. No, you go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, I think we're in a period of transition, right? I think so. We're kind of in a weird point where a lot of people are transitioning entirely into cloud gaming. Although one of our commenters said, but cloud gaming cannot be played online. Offline. So like you said, it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out, because really this is kind of relatively, they were doing, the service for years, but cloud gaming in itself and the popularization of it is relatively new. So we'll kind of see what happens with that.
Yeah. And I think the distinction with GeForce Now that Tim Sweeney's, pointing to, and he's certainly got, skin in the game too with Epic's Game Store and all that good stuff. But so, you have to understand there's motivations for lots of folks that are vocal in this situation. But the base premise that I stick with on GeForce Now is you own the game that you bought, a PC-based, platform game. You're playing that same game that you own on the same license that you own on a different medium. That's it. So why are the game pubs all of a sudden allowed to double dip? Well, because NVIDIA's charging maybe $6 a month. It's nothing. It barely, that helps them recoup their infrastructure costs and bandwidth and all this different stuff that it takes to make this a reality. So it feels like a money grab, and I think it's easy to point that. But at the point you make, Brittany, it is early. There's and somebody at NVIDIA actually, conveyed this notion to me. They said, Dave, it's early. There's going to be lots of puts and takes. So
yes.
It's a stock market euphemism. There's going to be lots of puts and takes, lots of people coming into the game, coming out of the game. There's a lot to shake out. There's lots of chips to fall still. But as a gamer, as a consumer, you want to be informed so that you can be part of the discussion, because ultimately these companies all serve you if they want to make a buck.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I guess something like that. Anyways, all right. Well, let's close off. Marco, tell them what the folks can win in 2 short days if they're in it to win it. The Hot Hardware Asetek Alienware Aurora Ryzen Invasion Gaming PC giveaway. Oh my God, too many words.
I think you already explained what we're giving away, but yeah, a couple of days left. Super easy to join. Come by the site, hit that Gleam widget, and tackle some of the entry methods there. Yeah, absolutely awesome. Ryzen 930, 950X and GeForce 2080 Ti powered Alienware machine up for grabs, along with along with the 34-inch curved display. So super powerful, awesome rig. We've given away tons of cool stuff the last few months. You can go see all the previous winners. We're not pulling your leg here. So yeah, 2 more days. Come by the site, enter. You could win. Huge thanks to Asetek for sponsoring the giveaway. Really, really cool system up for grabs.
Yeah, Asetek, the makers of the cooling system inside that, the all-in-one liquid cooler that's inside that machine. And that is not the display you'll win. That's my 27-inch 4K display. You have a much better display that you could win with this, and that's that beautiful curved Alienware display, 35-inch, I think. A curved Alienware display. Beautiful, beautiful machine, beautiful display. Up for grabs. Only a couple days left. Get in it to win it. HotHardware.com, where you can find us on the web. YouTube.com/HotHardware. Right here, where you should thumb up and subscribe. When you will get notified when we go live for the podcast. Wednesdays at 5:30. Facebook.com, Hot Hardware. We're there too. And yeah, I would love to see you and chat with you and all that good stuff, right?
Absolutely.
And with that, we will build you a do at least until next week. Thanks, everybody, for stopping by.